See now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Amrita Rajpan. I'm an early years specialist. I've been teaching for 22 years, but I've been learning my whole life. And that's why I have a company named Adhd Group. I'm passionate about creating learning environments that are engaging, meaningful, and fun for children. I'm also a sports nutritionist, an avid traveler, and active Rotarian. I'm the territory head for the Early Childhood Association Mumbai. I'm the founder of EduLearn Group and the co-founder of the ABCD show.
Hi, I'm Bela Kotwani, also known as Big B. Big for the size of my heart and B for Bela. A fun-loving person with a great sense of humor and a passionate pickleball player. National Core Committee member of Early Childhood Association, founder and principal Cosmic Kids International, co-founder Puppet Maestros and the ABCD show, an educationist and a puppeteer who helps teachers to make learning fun for children by using puppets as a tool for teaching. My vision is to help parents and teachers raise emotionally intelligent children.
Welcome to season 2 of the ABCD show. First of all, we'd like to thank all our viewers for viewing our show, for being so committed to your own learning, and for showing us all your love. We are all geared up to get you the best educators to enhance your skills and to take your knowledge to new heights.
We have some really exciting basket of offerings. We have our ABCD shows where we will call experts to talk about their best practices. We will introduce you to some really value for money and effective products and services. And we have some incredible courses that will help you gain mastery in the subject.
Season 2 has a different format. We will have Ask Amrita and Bela on alternate Wednesdays, where you will ask us your questions on child development and we will revert. And on the other 2 Wednesdays, we will have ABCD shows with speakers or we'll showcase new products or new ideas and innovations.
So, parents and teachers, email us your questions on topics relating to early childhood development, education, and rearing on the ABCD show 6 at gmail.com. And we will be back with the answers on Facebook Live. Waiting to see you soon.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to the ABCD show. We are now coming on only once a month, and we are so happy that all of you are here. Today's topic is really very interesting. And I can see the turnout also is quite a bit, at more than 100 questions. Bela, can you please mute Mohini? Yeah. Great. So the topic today is the role of educators in identifying behavior disorders in children. Did you know that 1 in 10 children under 12 years of age suffer from behavior disorders? 90% of all these diagnoses are missing in such children just due to lack of awareness. So here in this workshop, you're going to be getting little hints and few signs that you as an educator can use to identify children with relation who have behavior disorders. And we have with us our expert over here, Dr. Tarana Malick. Dr. Tarana Malick is she's a holistic, integrative pediatrician, and she's been practicing in Mumbai for over 8 years. She's actively involved with work around raising awareness regarding common illnesses in the pediatric age group, with special emphasis on developmental and behavioral disorders in children. And she believes that awareness is the first step towards prevention. So welcome, Dr. Tarana. We're so happy to have you over here.
Welcome, Tarana, from me as
Likewise,
well.
likewise. Thank you, both of you, and thank you everyone for joining in. I've never attended an ABCD show before, but I've been following your page since a while, and whatever you do has been so inspiring. So I thought, why not? Let's take up this topic and help teachers out more. So, as I said, we had rolled out a small survey form as a Google form, and I have received quite a few responses, and I'm glad to know that quite a few of the teachers and quite a few of our attendees are certified in special education. But nevertheless, there is always a chance to, learn something or, take home something that is different from what you already know. So, I think let's just begin. I would really want this to be an interactive session. However, when I will be taking the presentation, if during any part of the presentation, if you have any question, just drop them out in the chat section and we will pick them up later on once we are done. And if when I am describing a certain scenario, and if you have certain experiences that you faced or you have similar experiences around the situation, then feel free to write them down in the chat box below, because unless it is an interactive session, we won't be really having fun. Just before I begin, what is the comfort level of everybody with English, or should I mix and match English and Hindi as I speak? Let us know so I can do it in both the ways, however you all want. If type Y or yes in the chat if you all are comfortable with only English, then I will continue only in English.
Yes, ma'am, any language will do.
Okay, perfect.
Anna, we'll stick to English. If someone has an issue, then we'll go on to Hindi. So,
No problem. Okay. So let me just share the screen for now. Is it visible?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so before I actually start, let me just ask you all a question. What do you think are behavior disorders, and what comes to your mind when I say the word behavior disorder? You can type in the chat box, you can unmute, you can, however you want to respond, but I want responses. Come on, come on. What do you think? What, just the first word that comes to your mind when I say behavior disorders? I don't need technical terms or medical terms or diagnosis. I just need an idea.
Any behavior that is
Okay.
not socially accepted by
What we think is like what a norm of society, like what is acceptable in the society. We are like,
Okay.
this behavior, something which is like for children, like, when we compare, say like my child is like this, that child is like that. So behavior is something which is not acceptable by the society. That's what we think. But later on, the inner things and by diagnosis and that we is like next step, I think.
Okay. Sadaf has written behaving differently, and Tahira has given us a very nice descriptive answer. Anybody else, before I proceed, what do you think? What is behavior? What are behavior disorder? When will you call a behavior or a certain behavior a disorder? Okay, Girija is saying avoiding eye contact. Yes, that is a sign or a symbol or a symptom that could turn out. But okay, that is an indication of behavior disorder. Anyone else? Okay, so we proceed. Now, before I actually begin, today's session is aimed at identifying or assessing. Bella or Amrita, can we mute the participant? There's some noise, constant noise coming in. Okay. Bella, you're on mute.
I'm just
I think
muting
it's
all, then you
from,
unmute yourself, okay?
yes, yes. Okay, yeah, better. Perfect. So before we begin, the idea of today's session is to identify or assess. We are not talking about interventions per se, we are talking about identification. We today will try to understand firstly what is behavior, then what is a disorder, when do you combine them both and call them a behavior disorder, and how do you identify subtle signs and symptoms in children as a teacher, as an educator, so that you can bring it to the parents' notice, so that you can bring it to the school counselor's notice, and then move ahead towards remediation or intervention of these issues. Now, before I begin, I would actually like to express my gratitude, like genuine gratitude, and I'm blessed to have my own teacher here. So, thank you for being the light of so many lives. You guys have no idea what you do every single day, and more so during the pandemic, the hard work that the teachers have put in. It is commendable, and it is, you have no idea, like, just a small thing you do or say could impact a person's life and change the life of that student, and that student could remember you for years for that. So I know it's a thankless job, and sometimes you feel really annoyed out of, all the work that you do, but thank you so, so, so much for what you do, and please continue doing it every single day. So now we come to what do we expect from this session. As I said, we will be understanding what is behavior. We will be identifying the warning sign and the guiding signs, and also how and when can you help as an educator in facilitating a diagnosis. Understand that we as doctors or psychologists or therapists, we don't expect you to diagnose, but we help you to assist or facilitate a diagnosis so that you can point us towards a diagnosis. As after parents, teachers are the ones who mostly spend a lot of time with children now, more so that schools have reopened and daycares have reopened. So children spend a major part of the day in schools and daycares and back home. So you are a major part of the child's life. When we talk about behavior, just a second, sorry. When we talk about behavior, that's why I had asked you this question. What is a disorder? Will you call something a disorder, or when will you call something as normal? So someone, I think Tahira said that it's not acceptable according to the norms of the society. But then again, this has always been a debatable topic, because the society that we live in could have different norms. The society that someone else lives in could have different norms. The Western society is very different from us. So, here we still frown upon public display of affection, but maybe in the Western societies, they're absolutely okay with that. So, what is normal? What is abnormal? Unfortunately, we do not have a fine line of demarcation, and more so in the field of psychology, in the field of where brain and mind and functioning is involved. There is still a lot to identify, understand, and reach at conclusions. So, what helps us in identifying that if this is not okay or there is a deviation from normal is the frequency, duration, and pattern. Keep these three words in mind when for today's talk. We have to look at the frequency, duration, and patterns of the behavior. That is when we could at least start thinking that something could be wrong or something is going in the wrong direction. Now, let us take a little sneak peek into a child's brain. Okay, imagine. Have you all seen the movie Tare Zameen Par? I want you to visualize those things. When Amir Khan had shown during that song how different things are working simultaneously. That there's a story going on, or there's a memory working here in that corner, or there's something else. So there's so much going on, and scientifically also, a child up to 3 years of age has twice the amount of neuronal or the synaptic brain connections than the adult. So their brains genuinely work faster than us, and they are constantly thinking or doing, or their mind is not focused on one thing. They are, they are tackling multiple things at a given point of time. So when we are dealing with a kid, understand that in general also their attention span is not going to be as much as an adult. It improves as the child grows, it changes as the child grows, it changes as with life experiences, it changes with a lot of environmental, behavioral, social, cultural factors around the child. But just in general, understand that even if the child is small to you, you say, oh, this is just a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, but they have an emotional capacity or an emotional spectrum which is equivalent to an adult. Okay, so what we feel and what we absorb from our surroundings is exactly what a child is doing. So a lot of times I even tell the parents that, sometimes you may be stressed, you will not even say it verbally, but your child is absorbing the vibes, the child is absorbing the energy around him, and he's understanding that there's something wrong in my house, there's something wrong with my parents. So the whole problem here is, or problem actually, it's not even a problem. The thing is that they lack experience. So even if they're experiencing a certain kind of an emotion, they don't know what that emotion is, first of all, and then they don't know what to do with that emotion. If a child till up to say till the language part particularly develops in a child till 1.5 to 2 years of age, crying or irritability or crankiness is the only mode of communication, because they don't know apart from that how will they communicate. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that they lack experience in coping with their emotions. And also sometimes we feel that a child may be overreacting. A lot of parents come to me and say that, oh, my child always exaggerates the situation, so I only take him seriously when I feel that this could be a problem. Or even the teachers feel, okay, arey, this person so creates drama in class. He's like the drama queen of the class. This person has to do something every day, otherwise the day will not go. But do we understand that maybe this is not an exaggeration? So just take it for an example. If a child loses a toy for the first time, probably this is the biggest loss they've ever experienced in their lives. They don't have a scale to compare it to. So a lost toy could be a very big thing for a child. A scraped elbow or a minor injury, or just maybe they're in the mall and they got lost for some time, for 30-40 seconds they couldn't find their mother. So that could be a big heavy emotional experience for a child. You're the mother saying that you're not allowed to watch your iPad now. It's more than enough now. We go to bed. So that would be the biggest injustice ever to the child. So what I'm trying to convey here is that as they grow and develop with their own experiences, with experiences surrounding them, with their learnings, that is how their emotional capacity evolves, and that is how eventually the behavior changes. Now, when we talk about why they react like this, the major reason behind is that they don't have even a realistic view of their own selves. Even today, as an adult, we are all here who are adults who have experience in our field. But even if I ask you today, as just like a random question, describe yourself in 5 lines, you'll be you'll be taken by a surprise. You'll be like, okay, just give me 2 minutes. Let me think. How do I describe myself? Who am I? What do I like? What do I do? So how are we expecting children to know who they are and what they are becoming or what they are developing into? They are learning everything that they see for the first time is something that they save in their memory. It's something that they learn. So they have no realistic view of things around them, and even for themselves, they don't have a stable sense of identity. And even if they have a lot of, they've been, if you have a child who's traveled to a lot of places, or if you have a child who has comparatively more experience than someone who has not, but still they don't know what to do with those experiences. They don't have a frame of reference, or they don't have the rationality to use those experiences for future events. That only comes after 5 to 6 years of age. That's when you start expecting a child to behave in a certain manner. That's when you expect a child who will probably stand up when the teacher enters the class, or stand up for the national anthem, or just routine behaviors that is expected out of children. So uh, you cannot tag them or label them as abnormal. Also, there are days, even we as adults, we have good days and bad days. There are days when only yesterday I was in a mood. I was like, I told people around me, just only talk to me when it's very important. Otherwise, I really want to be by myself. Today, I'm not in a mood to interact or argue with anybody. So even our children can have those days, right? But does that mean it is a disorder? Yesterday I was in an irritable mood, but does that put me into a spectrum of a psychiatric disorder? No. So when we are assessing, we have to keep all these things in mind. So here I'm just going to quickly share a very small video into an insight of why do children misbehave, and then we move on to how these behavior disorders can be identified. I hope till now whatever I'm trying to convey is being conveyed. And if you have any doubts, please, type them in the chat box. If you're not understanding anything, I will repeat it or I will try to simplify it further. But first, we watch this small video on why do students misbehave.
What are some of the many reasons that students misbehave? One reason that is very obvious is for attention. Some students act out in a way to get a quick laugh from their peers. When they act out, the teacher rewards them with attention. Any type of response from the teacher is a form of attention. The second reason is that they follow group behavior. If a few students are fooling around in the class, you should expect to quickly find another handful of students to join in the chaos. What you have here is a ripple effect. In this instance, students don't really know if the rules that are being broken are actually going to be enforced, or they don't even know what the rules are to begin with. Number 4, the battle for control. You'll find that in every classroom, there's going to be a student that constantly challenges your authority. They misbehave for power or simply because they feel as though the teacher doesn't have a right to tell them how to behave. Your students may misbehave simply because they don't feel like doing their work. If students don't know how to do the work, or maybe they just don't feel like doing the work that particular day, expect to see them misbehave in a way that gets them out of doing any assignments. Number 6, students bring their problems from outside of school into the classroom. No one knows what a child is going through emotionally except for that child. Students come to class with baggage that often manifests itself as misbehavior. Boredom. Schoolwork usually isn't the most exciting thing for kids. You'll notice that the more boring the assignment, the more they'll misbehave. This is why it's important to provide engaging work. And lastly, their disability. Some students have behavioral disabilities, or chronic inattention, for example. In these serious cases, students might be off their medication, which will only make matters worse.
Okay, so this was just a sort of a summary of what I was trying to convey, that not all behavior or not all deviations in behavior patterns are abnormal. There could be multiple reasons behind it. And before we arrive at conclusions or before we try to label them, especially as educators, because you deal with them for a major part of their day, try to understand where they're coming from. If this behavior is acute, this is just for a day or it has been going on, or there are phases. There's so much to analyze if you actually if you feel that some child could have a behavioral issue. Now, coming to the technicality part, what are the emotional behavior disorders? Now, these disorders will be inability to learn. These children, obviously, the first thing you'll notice is they will not be able to learn or follow any instructions. But that is not because of any intellectual or other health factors. So we are not talking about low IQ issues or any other intellectual disability here. We are not talking about a hearing disability or a vision disability or a talk speaking or language disability. So emotional behavioral disorders point into the spectrum where the child shows incapacity or inability to learn and behave in a certain manner when other things are negated out. So they also have other signs that exist around it. They will not be able to maintain satisfactory relationships with even their peers, so their classmates or even their teachers and others in the school. they will have behavior or feelings that are inappropriate. So they could have sudden outbursts of laughing, crying, or sudden impulsive behaviors that you will not be able to gauge or label as appropriate for that particular situation or moment. They could also have phases through where they go through these phases of unhappiness, sadness, low activity, low energy, depression, or unhappiness. And they could also present with irrational fears or physical symptoms. Like, I had a child who would refuse to go to the bathroom, who would not go to the bathroom at all. Like the teacher would, there was a guy who would take the child, but then even the teacher started taking the child. Still, I take you, you come with me, but that child will not move. So, we worked it out, and the case turned out to be some, past PTSD that the child had because of some other experience. But what I'm trying to tell you is they will have irrational reactions or fears to their situations around them. Now, any behavior which you label or think is not normal, I am not using the word abnormal because that is a different category at all. But when you start to think that this is not okay, you have to remember Q. The Q2 is Q, which is chronic, unacceptable, and extreme. So any change in the behavior that is chronic for more than 6 to 8 months, you've been constantly noticing certain patterns or behavior persistence in a child, that behavior is unacceptable, which means that at least by the rules of the school, I would not use the word societal norms, but at least by the rule of your school and your classroom as a teacher, that behavior is unacceptable and it is extreme, which means that it is not something that you would get controlled by just pacifying or explaining or just, shouting at the kid. The child has an extreme reaction and sudden reaction out of nowhere. The child starts behaving like this. So remember, CUE, chronic, unacceptable, and extreme behavior is when you start thinking that there could be a deviation from normal. Now, just quickly understanding that all behavior disorders or all changes of behavior could not be related to just a behavior disorder. There are different ways of manifesting it. If somebody is internalizing a behavior, which means that the child is directing the problem towards his own self. So the child will be more anxious. The child will be shy. The child will be withdrawn. There will be a lot of social isolation. There will be no friends. That you could also get a history of nightmares or other episodes from the parents. And of course, if you are dealing with children who are older, there could be history of substance abuse, but that is basically after 12 years of age. So this is what you could also see as a change in behavior, but they do not necessarily identify a behavior disorder. They are a indication of something deeper, which I would come on later on. But sometimes these are also mixed along with outright signs of behavioral disorders, which is uh, primarily an externalizing behavior, which means that the child is directing his troublesome actions outwards. It could be towards other children or towards the child's environment. So it could involve act of physical violence, vandalism, destruction of school property, destruction of his own notebooks, just random, throwing things around or behaving in a very loud or obnoxious manner. So the commonest behavior disorders that you can identify as a teacher in a classroom is disruptive impulse control or conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and ADHD. I'm sure everybody knows ADHD by the tip of their tongue now. So we'll quickly just run through them and understand them. How do you understand that what symptom could be a sign of what disorder? Now, as the name suggests, disruptive impulse control or conduct disorder presents as persistent. Now, I've highlighted these words because these are very important. Persistence has to be there. There is repetitive violation of rules and there is a disregard of rights of others. What does this mean? That the child does not consider anybody around him. So if you're doing a group activity, the child is disregarding other children, wants himself to be first, or wants if they're standing in line to receive, say, food, or they are standing in line to get some certificate or prize, they will push others, they'll bully others, and they want themselves to be first. So they disregard others around them. most commonly seen in boys than girls, and the ideal age of identification of this sort of disorder is around 4 years of age. But we, as pediatricians and psychologists too, do not label a diagnosis till 5 years of age, but the child could start showing signs from 3 to 4 years of age. So, conduct disorder later on can increase a child's risk of substance abuse. That is when the child grows up into a teenager. There could be teen pregnancies. The incidence of teen pregnancies is very high in children who had a history of conduct disorder, and they may also evolve into later on more complex psychiatric diagnoses like depression, anxiety, and other mood disorders. Now, the key towards identifying it is that the child should have shown at least three of these symptoms that I have listed here. The child should have shown these three for at least 12 months, or at least one of them over the past 6 months. Only then can we think that the child could have conduct disorder. We are talking about aggression towards people and animals. This is not normal aggression. Okay, sometimes if a child is pulling a dog's or cat's tail, that is not aggression. Aggression is picking up a stone and throwing at a dog or a cat on the street. That is aggression. Or hitting the dog or a cat with a pencil or whatever, thing they could have in their hand. Destruction of property. Kids have a habit of taking their pens and pencils and scratching the benches and walls. That is not destruction of property, okay? Destruction is when they try to break it, or when they break it, or when they do things that are not okay. Like, uh, I mean, I think you have more experience in that. The most common clue that is the active deceitfulness of theft. Okay, I have seen this. Children may not show aggression, they will behave very well, they will not destroy property, but children who repetitively lie and lie for useless causes, okay, they create stories in their heads and for people around them, and they steal things, okay. And those, especially those children who have a lot of good things for themselves, okay, if you see their bag, they will have the best eraser, best notebook, best bag, everything will be good, but they will still steal it from others. So that is the biggest sign of something going wrong in the child's behavior, and that is usually the most common sign that children show in this kind of disorder. And also, we are talking about serious violation of rules. As I said, chote mote masti to everybody does. But when the child is seriously violating major rules of your school and your classroom, is when you start to think that this child could have a conduct disorder. Now, similarly, on the same lines, we have oppositional defiant disorder. It is like if conduct disorder was grade one or first standard, now ODD is second standard. Okay, now the child will be a little more intense to handle. Okay, here again, the keyword is recurrent. The child will show recurrent, negativistic, defiant means not ready to listen, not obeying, hostile behavior towards authority figures. So here, instead of their peers, instead of having issues with their classmates, they will have issues with teachers and the boys and the people in the school who take care of them. Okay. So they will constantly get into arguments or constantly do things that could irritate teachers. So again, this is primarily identifiable around 8 to 10 years of age. But as an educator, you can easily pick up these signs from 6 years, from class one onwards. And again, this is more common in boys than girls. So again, this has certain subtypes where the child is constantly angry, irritable, and that anger and irritability easily turns into hostility or violence. Okay, it's not even rationalized behavior. If you take away something from the child could get irritated. It's a normal response. But that response, if it is suddenly turning into hostility, where the child is either pulling his own hair or banging the bench or doing something which is absolutely disrupting the normal dynamics of your classroom, that is when you think that something is wrong. There will be constant arguments or constant defiance of the behavior. The child will not listen to you. You say you do your classwork, they'll say why. I don't want to study. I don't want to do this homework. I'm not in a mood to say this poem. You say we have to appear for a test. You say I have not studied. I don't want to do it. So there'll be constant arguments. And even after rationalizing the situation to them, there are teachers and mothers who take the onus and they take the step further and rationally explain why is it required for you. उसके बाद भी वो लोग नहीं मानते. And there is vindictiveness. Okay, vindictiveness, as I said, just say conduct disorder may lying and deceitfulness was a very important sign. Here, vindictiveness is a very important sign. I have seen that even after days, if you as a teacher probably scolded a child today, the child will carry it and probably will come back with something of a revenge sort of a thing back to you after a week or 5 days, or in a situation where he or she feels it is easier to execute the revenge. So the vindictiveness is a very important feature again in this sort of disorder. The third one that we have is ADHD, as we know, is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It is not primarily a behavior disorder. It forms there is something further which is wrong more than behavior, but it also affects the behavior, and it is also often seen in coexistence with these other two behavior disorders that we just discussed, which is conduct disorder and oppositional defiant disorder. But also understand that not all lapses in behavior or attention is ADHD. Okay, now today if I am scrolling Instagram, I come across a very beautiful Zara shirt and I'm like, oh, I want it, and I just click on it and I purchase it in the next 30 seconds. That's impulsive behavior. But does that label me with ADHD? No. So you have to understand that impulsiveness and all the time does not label or does not fall into the category of ADHD. So you have to, here again, the keyword is persistence and repetition. The children with ADHD primarily have a different pattern only. Like you cannot miss them. They start showing these signs from 2 to 3 years of age. So even teachers over here who deal with preschoolers and who take care of students before the first grade, even they will be able to identify this behavior, even though we absolutely do not label a diagnosis before 5 years of age, but you can start identifying these signs. Again, unfortunately, boys show this as a common sign than girls. And as I said, this exists with other behavior disorders. And this is ADHD is often coupled with major issues, like the child will have gross issues in learning, language development, or understanding basic school subjects, which otherwise could be easier for other students of the class. So, and these children are the ones who are things who repeatedly get suspended because they are, running around, jumping around, dancing around the classroom. The child, the वही बेचारे हमेशा punish होते रहते हैं. They are the ones who repeat grades, and they are the ones who I'm not sure how often or how common is repeating grades in today's education system. But they are the ones who show, they are the ones who are doing retest, or they are the ones who have to do their assignments again and again and again. Understand that these people, these children also have a significant social impairment. So not only will they be able to understand you, they will not be able to get along with you also. They will not be able to communicate with you what they want or what they are facing. So the dilemma of dealing with an emotionally disturbed child is they're often abandoned by educators. I get students, jinko schools, they let go of them because they are not able to deal with them after repetitive, measures and things that they do. So they are often abandoned by educators and schools. They require more time and effort than other students, but understand if you're able to crack the right way of working with them, they can be the most rewarding students. And often those students will become your favorite because you will form a bond or connection with them where you can work with them in sync. And of course, you need therapies. Just forming a connection will not help, but if you're able to work around a emotionally, behaviorally disturbed child, it's very rewarding to you as a professional. And a single EBD student, I'm sure, is enough to disrupt the whole classroom dynamics. One kid running around, jumping, dancing around like a monkey is enough to disrupt the whole dynamics of the classroom. Now, there are various strategies to identify these emotional behavior disorders. I will not be going into detail because these are a session in themselves. These are like whole interventional techniques that you could use as an educator, but I'll just quickly run through these. So first is obviously response to intervention, which I'm sure you do overall as a teacher for your students. You do when you do their quarterly or monthly evaluation, you understand how they are responding to whatever their responses to whatever intervention you are doing. So this just not only helps you in the academic field, it will also help you in identifying emotionally and behaviorally disturbed student. The second way is a functional behavioral assessment, where you identify what is the root cause of the behavior. As we just saw in the video before, there could be multiple reasons why a child is misbehaving and not just because of a behavior disorder. The approach towards this sort of a diagnosis is ABC, where you identify the antecedent or understand what happened exactly before the behavior occurred. If there was something that triggered the behavior, why did the behavior happen, or it happens around at a particular time of the day. Especially this is for teachers who deal with uh, 3 to 4 years of age group. You know, temper tantrums and these behaviors have a certain time of happening. When the child is exhausted, when the child is cranky, irritable, hungry, that's when you see these behaviors. So you have to also understand that there could be a pattern or a time around which this happens. You have to understand the behavior, which is B, and describe, account, like make a note of that behavior so that you are able to compare it against the next time it happens. So whether the behavior involved aggression or whether the behavior involved an escape response, how often did it occur, and what was the consequence to this whole episode? Uh, was it disruptive to the classroom, or was it only disruptive to the child himself? And what exactly happened as a result of the child's behavior? So, just RTI has different levels basically. There are tiers to RTI. As I said, these are all in detail topic. I wouldn't really want to touch them as such, but we could have a session on this where we speak about different interventional strategies as educators which you could use. On the first level of RTI, all the students will receive the same amount of instruction. Then on the second level, you divide them into small groups and give them an additional instruction over and above to what was given to the generalized group. And in the third level, you identify the students who did not respond or do well to the level one and level two instruction, and then give them individual attention. So this is just a broad idea of what RTI is. And again, a broad idea of functional behavioral assessment, that you do it by direct observation, that you do, like as I said, you note down your first hand response as a teacher, as an educator, to what happened in the classroom. Sometimes noting down the episode really helps us as pediatricians and psychologists in identifying and assessing, because by the time you will describe it orally, we also know, okay, I tell you something, then you tell someone else the whole episode. By the time it reaches the third person, the whole account only would have changed. So noting down what has happened as 1, 2, 3 is like the best way of preserving that episode and presenting it properly to the right people. And uh, then we have other ways of assessing. We give the child and the teacher a certain questionnaires to work around with, and the last way is to do a functional analysis. But overall, interventions I don't really want to get into. Before I end, I want you to understand आज हम यहाँ क्यों आए हैं. Why was I so, you know, enthusiastic about telling you about behavior disorders? Because main picture तो अभी बाकी है. The reason is the long-term consequences of EBD. I keep telling parents, I keep telling everybody, this is not just a problem that will go away by 10 to 12 years of age. These children develop gross emotional inadequacies. They start feeling, as a child grows up, when he becomes 7 to 8 years of age, now he starts understanding, something is wrong with me. I am not like others. And they start to feel stupid. They start feeling that I am a failure. Either I am inadequate, either I am stupid, or either I am a failure. And they start feeling that they are not capable of being around their supposedly normal peers or other students. So this eventually develops into anxiety disorders. This can lead into childhood depression. This can lead into substance abuse, which is a very common problem, but again, a very underrated issue in teenagers. Juvenile delinquencies, which means that some of them can go and commit serious crimes, which is rare but does happen. Self harm, suicide, very, 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 very common. does not happen in younger children, starts happening after and around teenage when obviously the pressure and everything increases around them. But this is what these simple looking behaviors or deviation in the behaviors could lead into. So it's sometimes I tell parents and students, teachers that it's okay to be extra cautious. अगर कुछ भी नहीं है ना, and if you feel that there could be something, just point it out. Just make them aware that something could be going on. We can never go wrong in being extra cautious. We can go wrong in missing out a probable diagnosis. So it's always better to be cautious, to be vigilant, but also not sideline them. Okay, we don't use words like I've seen parents saying that, oh my God, my child is showing such ADHD behavior. And I'm like, just stop. This is not the right word to use. Maybe your child is not understanding it now, but 2 साल बाद वो Google पे देखेगा what is ADHD and he'll understand what are you saying about him. So your role is to identify also, but also not to stigmatize them or make them feel that something is wrong with them. So I think we are running short of time, and this is where I would like to conclude for today. I hope I was able to convey the essence and the gist of today's topic. Um, we have time for question answers. We will take up some questions. Nevertheless, my contact information is present on your screen. You can take a screenshot of the slide, and you can always contact me. If I don't receive your phone, drop in a message on the WhatsApp number, and I will always get back to you with whatever query. Understand, no question is ever dumb. I don't believe this. I'm telling this to teachers, but जैसे आप स्टूडेंट्स को बोलते हो जो भी डाउट है पूछो, nothing is dumb. So I'm telling you all, please open up, and please, now this is the time we take up question answers. And also I would invite Amrita and Bella to share their insights, because I am the only one who's blabbering constantly since so long. So we quickly do this before we wrap up.
Tarana, actually, I was more keen on the question by the lady asked in the beginning of the session about how to identify whether it's the
Yes,
uh,
yes.
thing or whether the child is actually having some disorder. So if you can throw some light on that, it would be really nice.
Yes, so as I said that everybody, okay, even adults who are working from home and then had to go to office were throwing tantrums. So you have to understand that वो तो बेचारे बच्चे who are going to school. So they would, by now they would have adjusted, but still some will require a little more time for them. They're going to school for the first time, and the first introduction to school happened to them through a computer. They never went to school physically. So you have to give them some, buffer time to adjust, but also start noticing that, as I said, that these repetitive and persistent patterns, if you start noticing, then start noting them down. Don't jump up to conclusions. Probably give them an extra month or two to see if they are adjusting or not adjusting, if they are listening to you, if they are responding to the interventions that you're doing. So give them a little amount of time, and I think they all basically a child who does not have a behavior disorder will be happy in school, because not just he's getting उसको घर से बाहर जाने मिल रहा है, he's getting to chill with the friends and other peers in the school, so उनको मस्ती भी करने मिलेगा. So a child who does not have a behavior disorder will look at the advantages more of being in the school than the disadvantages. So see that in the behavior first.
And some children, they get very aggressive when they're supposing somebody takes their toy away. They want to, sometimes they actually bite the child. They don't realize that, that is a not acceptable behavior. So how do you handle situations like that in the classroom?
So as I said, again, you have to intervene in a rational way. Firstly, obviously, you try to explain to the child that what you're doing is wrong. Obviously, I'm sure everybody does it. And then make them understand that there will be consequences to their behavior. So if they do not listen to you the next time, there will be a consequence, and make sure you make that consequence happen. There are teachers who say, "Oh, I'll punish you," but then you never punish. So the child is like, ये तो मतलब background noise है, ये तो चालू ही रहता है. So you have to set up clear rules and boundaries. Okay, if you don't do this or if you don't listen to me, you will be punished. So मतलब तुमको मिलेगा punishment. So एक बार punishment मिलेगा, so the child will be like, okay, now I have to understand. And even if उसके बाद भी the child is not understanding or not understanding the meaning of punishment, or you feel the child is becoming more vindictive after a punishment, that could be an indication that this child has a behavior disorder. But this is not just one isolated episode, it has to be a collection of such episodes.
True.
As a, yeah.
So
The
there's
other
one more question by Shirin, and she says if a 7 to 8-year-old child is asked to do something, for example, sitting to study, and the child keeps making a fuss, and at the end you're so frustrated, you resort to shouting or beating. So what does the person do in this case?
So,
And
okay, this
she's
is a,
also written, this is from a parent's perspective. So can you give
yeah,
us both the perspectives? But I'm sure teachers don't shout and beat. She's right about that.
yeah,
They may
absolutely.
shout, but they don't beat.
Yeah, so shouting is okay. I'm not saying we are all humans. हमारा भी एक limit होता है. Shout तो कर ही सकते हैं, but beating absolutely not okay as a teacher or as a parent. Some children understand, you have to understand the psyche of your child. So if your 7, 8 year old is not sitting, why is he not sitting? Are there distractions around? Or are they not comfortable in the setup that you're trying to make the child sit? Or is this just a general behavior कि उसको पढ़ना ही नहीं है, or probably he's not understanding what you're trying to make him do. So understand the cause behind it. Till you cannot solve a problem till you don't know what the reason behind the problem is. So just not sitting to study is a very broad thing. You know, maybe the child is hungry, or maybe you're making the child sit to study when it is his bedtime, or when some favorite TV show is playing in the background. You know, Dadi Nani are watching TV, and the child wants to go out and watch TV. So you have to understand. And after that, अगर उसका कोई rational explanation नहीं मिल रहा है, and then you tried all the methods and still your child doesn't want to study, then you consider that maybe what you're trying your child to read, learn, or remember, memorize, that your child is not able to do. So then you ask the child, and if the child is old enough to explain, the child will tell you what the problem is. So I know frustration comes in easily, but we have to be extra patient as teachers, as doctors, as parents to understand what is going on in the child's mind before we take any action.
Very true. Sometimes they're just not involved in the learning process. And then they don't know where they are. And that's why they're just,
Absolutely.
not able to catch up. So it's not always a learning disorder.
Ma'am,
Absolutely.
I have a question. Like, with my child, I'm working with the EIC. So, this is a particular child who always, like, when he's showing like very excited, I would given him like, he's okay when comes happily, but as the class timings are going on, suddenly he will come and bite even the teachers, or like today he bit a girl on her stomach, that was very irrational behavior, I would say it. But all of a sudden he
How
himself
old is the child?
like around 3.5 to 4, but very good communication, everything, understands his behaviors with time, and we give him reinforcements that see this was not, even counseling is done, and we are refraining him from going, like taking away some uh, things, like we are going to the playground, so he's not allowed to take it in the playground. We are like counseling him. That time he understands, he apologizes, everything. But this tantrum, we are not able to figure it out, what is the trigger. So even like I tried with the hungry this thing, that maybe he's coming empty stomach, he goes to OT also. We have tried all the remedies, but it's getting worse day by day instead of improving. So we are doubting that maybe this type of thing is coming from the home sometimes, because how the
Yes,
child
yes.
feels in the home. So we are little considerate, and the mothers are not openly. So I told them to share the home tips as well, so we can compare that how is he in school and how is he at home.
So, in situations like this, we do something called as a wraparound service, which means that we wrap around all the important and key people in the child's life and get them on one place and communicate with them. As you rightly said, there could be something going on at the level of the child's home, and that is why the child is reflecting this behavior. Sometimes, there is a lot of parental dispute and
Aggression, yeah.
familial dispute which happens, and the child reflects this in the form of aggression towards his other peers. Or maybe the child has an elder sibling or has friends in the building where the child sees such kind of behavior and thinks that this is acceptable. So you need to, use
Wrap
the
around it.
resources, wrap around and understand what is going wrong with the child. Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
no problem.
Any other questions from the audience? I think we're almost 5 o'clock now, but should we call it a day? I'm sure we have a lot of questions in mind, but I think Tarana's also shared a number with you all. In case you got any questions, please do write to her. You may even send us the questions. We'll ask Tarana and get back to you. And we'll definitely share this video even on Facebook, since we lacked sharing it right now with you all. We'll put it on Facebook and also the YouTube.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
May I
Okay.
ask? Okay.
Yes,
As you have shown us ABC, that antecedent behavior and consequences. If there is any behavior occurs, so we need to do ABC. But don't you think that might be some reason which trigger him from home also, right? Because I am taking the consequences, I am taking the answer then from the school only. But there must be something at home also which we don't know. As a teacher, we couldn't find it out.
Absolutely.
And we are going away and taking our school classes, everything, but couldn't figure it out. But might be this thing also happened, na? Maybe at home.
So ABC not just means, are just around, we focus around that episode at that particular time. But as I said, it has to be over a period of time. And usually as teachers, you come to know if the child is going through something at home. You come to know during their weekly, monthly assessments, when you talk to their mother, when you talk to the parent, or if the parent is absent, or if you come to know if the child is being raised by grandparents more than the parents. So it's not that you're always clueless about what is going on at home. You know your children. And luckily in today's day and age, we have a very nice student-teacher ratio. At least when I grew up, we were like 50, 60 of us in one classroom to one teacher. So सबकी story नहीं पता होती थी, but at least अभी तो teachers know. And now I think you all have WhatsApp groups also where you constantly put daily updates to the students. And so it's very easy to, because of the resources that we have today, it's not just during the classroom. You can also, of course, go back and identify. When you conclude that मेरे classroom की वजह से ये नहीं हुआ, मतलब, first you conclude that the trigger of the behavior is not in my classroom. And when you have concluded that, then you intervene and identify the issue outside the classroom.
First, we need to gather the information, right? Like what's happening.
Yes.
Thank you, Tarana, for taking out time and spending and sharing all your knowledge with all of us on this platform. And I'm sure soon we will have a session with you where you also should tell us not how to identify, but also how to deal with situations like these in our classroom.
Absolutely.
So thank you once again, Tarana.
Thank you. Pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much for listening to me. Yap. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to all the audience as well for being here with us. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tarana.
Thank you, Amrita. Pleasure was mine.
Yes, I think so many things could have been used in our regular classrooms also. It's not only about having learning disorders, but it's about using this knowledge everywhere. I particularly like the thing about your observations, when you said, write it down from an objective point of view. And when you're writing out and it's not hearsay and going to other people, you'll realize that a lot of unrelated stuff is getting out. So when you're doing an observation for your own assessment for your children, that's the actual way to do it. Write it down unbiasedly, exactly what happened, and then you will see, and then you possibly will see patterns and possibly you won't.
Yes.
Maybe it's something which is already in your head and you're putting it down. So this...
sometimes even teachers could be having a bad day and you could just find a student irritating.
It could be very irritating, or, that must be one of your triggers also,
Yes.
You don't like children being a particular way, boisterous or noisy or whatever. And that may be coming across. So it's nice to just monitor and see. Not everything can be a disorder, but of course we have Tarana's number now.
Thank you once again, Tarana. Nice having you on our show.
Also, if you would like to have another show with Dr. Tarana, on strategies that you could use in the classroom.
We wanted to.
We already have now about observing these children and knowing what is wrong. Next thing could be strategies. Is that something you would be interested in?
Yes, definitely.
I'm definitely.
We'll try and plan that for you.
I think we can plan one more then, Dr. Tarana.
Lovely. Definitely we'll do that. Sure.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Tarana.
See you.
That's a
And
happy
Thank you. And this is for those who will listen to the recording later on. You were not there for the live session, but you can still post your queries in the comment section below and we will respond to them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Tarana.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you all.
Bye. Bye.
Keep
Bye.
watching the ABCD show.